The U.S. Treasury borrows money by issuing government securities like Treasury bills, Treasury notes, and bonds, which are just differentiated amongst themselves by the time the country has to repay them. These are IOUs. Investors from banks, businesses, and pension funds to individual citizens and foreign governments. Even our own state and local governments buy them, loaning money to the government in exchange for future repayment with interest. That's right, you personally can buy Treasury securities right now at treasurydirect.gov. Add up all the deficits over time, which includes all the interest from borrowing money and all of our expenses, and subtract any surpluses, which is when we actually take in more money than we spend, and that's the sum total of everything we owe, the national debt. By the way, an interesting aside, each year the government borrows money to cover the deficit of that year. But that's not all the borrowing. When the older debt, the debt we already borrowed, comes due, the government actually has to then borrow more money just to pay off what it owes on the old debt. That's what happens when you run big deficits year after year after year. Why does the national debt matter? Well, for starters, paying interest on the debt in 2024 alone is the third largest expenditure by the federal government, bigger than Medicare and national defense. We'll explore the debt in more detail, but first, some history. The U.S. has had a national debt actually from the beginning. In 1790, just 2 years after the Constitution was ratified, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton reported that the federal government owed about $71 million, mostly from the Revolutionary War and from the federal government assuming the debts of the states. Over the past 230 years, the debt has really grown. The following examples are not adjusted to today's dollars. They're not inflation adjusted. During the Civil War, the debt jumped from about $91 million to $2.7 billion. World War I, it went from $3.1 billion to $27.4 billion. World War II, the debt soared from $49 billion to $259 billion. In the 1980s, it tripled from $908 billion to, for the first time, over $1 trillion. It tripled to $3.2 trillion because of slow growth in tax revenue and increased defense spending. During the Great Recession, it increased from $9 trillion to $13.6 trillion. And with COVID-19, the debt rose from $27 trillion to $33 trillion, more than $6 trillion growth due to pandemic relief efforts. As of August of 2025, the national debt is over $38 trillion. Let's break that down. The total national debt includes two major parts: intragovernmental debt and debt held by the public. What is intragovernmental debt? Intragovernmental debt is what the federal government owes to itself. Huh? How's that possible? Here's an example. Your Social Security taxes go into a trust fund to pay benefits for people on Social Security. And all that money is invested in Treasury securities. In 2024, intragovernmental debt totaled $7.36 trillion. The rest of the debt is called debt held by the public, and that debt is owed to outside entities, to individual citizens, to banks, to investment funds, to state and local governments, to the Federal Reserve Bank even, and of course also foreign countries. At the end of 2024, it totaled $28.86 trillion. What do you think old Alexander Hamilton would think of that? This public debt is more closely watched by economists because essentially the finance markets never really see or get engaged with the intragovernmental debt. Now, exactly who owns the debt? Very glad you asked. 70% of the public debt has been borrowed from Americans. That is, our state and local governments, the Federal Reserve Bank, American businesses and pension funds, 401ks, and American citizens. The other 30% is borrowed from foreign investors. Our biggest foreign buyers of U.S. debt are, well, let's guess. Did you guess China? I bet you did. Close, but the biggest is actually Japan, then China, and then the UK, the United Kingdom. Together, they own 8.8% of all the U.S. debt held by the public. Woof! That means we owe those countries $2.5 trillion. Now let's look at how much the debt costs us. Our total interest on the debt in 2024 was $880 billion.